When Diana Spencer walked down the aisle of St. Paul's Cathedral in 1981, the world was sold a fairy tale, a young commoner, a prince, a love story for the ages. But quietly, behind closed doors, genealogists and historians had already discovered something the palace never announced, something that flipped the entire story upside down. Diana Spencer was not the commoner she was made out to be. When researchers traced her bloodline back through the centuries, through ancient church records, forgotten estate documents, and eventually DNA analysis, what they found was extraordinary. Diana carried more ancient English royal blood in her veins than the man she married. And the further they looked, the stranger the secret became. Before she was a princess, before the wedding, before the world knew her name, she was simply Lady Diana Spencer. Born on the 1st of July, 1961, in a house on the Sandringham estate in Norfolk, the very grounds where the British royal family spent their Christmases. Even as a child, she was already closer to royalty than the public ever understood. Her father had served as a personal aide to King George VI and to Queen Elizabeth II herself. Her maternal grandmother spent decades as a lady-in-waiting to the Queen Mother. Her brother Charles was Queen Elizabeth's godson. A consultant to Burke's Peerage, the ancient register of British aristocracy, reportedly observed at the time of her engagement, there could not be another family so stiff with royal connections. But those connections went deeper than royal service. The Spencer family had been an aristocratic English dynasty since the 15th century. Their ancestral home, Althorpe House in Northamptonshire, had been in the family since 1508. For 500 years, the Earls of Spencer had served the monarchy, managing its households, fighting its wars, lending it money, and orbiting its power. What no one fully grasped in 1981, not the press, not the public, perhaps not even the palace, was what was buried deep inside that bloodline. To understand what the DNA research would eventually expose, you have to go back to one of the most scandalous chapters in English history. King Charles that ruled England from 1660 to 1685. He was brilliant, politically cunning, deeply charming, and by every historical account, one of the most prolific lovers the English crown had ever seen. His wife bore him no surviving children, but his mistresses, a series of aristocratic women from some of England's greatest families, bore him at least 12 acknowledged children. Those children were given titles, lands, and marriages into the highest levels of the English nobility. When Charles II died, the throne passed to his brother, then to a series of queens with no surviving heirs. And in 1714, Parliament reached across the sea to Germany and invited a German prince, George I of Hanover, to become King of England. From that moment forward, the British royal family was, at its root, a German dynasty. Generation after generation, British monarchs married into European royal houses, German princesses, Danish duchesses, Dutch princes, and in 1917, as German bombs fell on London during the First World War, King George V made a decision that revealed just how far the crown had drifted from its English origins. He quietly changed the royal family's official surname, from Saxe-Coburg-Gotha to Windsor. The name was English, the bloodline was not. Meanwhile, the descendants of King Charles II's illegitimate children had been quietly living inside the English aristocracy for 200 years, not on a throne, not in palaces, but in manor houses, in ancient family records, in bloodlines like the Spencers. When genealogists began tracing Diana's ancestry in earnest, both at the time of her engagement and later using modern DNA analysis and digital archive access, the findings were almost impossible to believe. Diana descended not from one, but from two of King Charles II's illegitimate children, Henry Fitzroy and Charles Lennox, the Duke of Richmond. These connections flowed through two of her great-grandmothers on her father's side. And it didn't stop there. Through her paternal grandmother's Hamilton lineage, researchers found a third line of royal descent, this one running back through the illegitimate children of King James II. Further branches reached back to Mary, Queen of Scots, to the Tudor line through Margaret Tudor, the daughter of Henry VII. The Spencers, genealogists concluded, carried at least 5 separate lineages of descent from the royal house of Stuart. When all of it was assembled, When the archival records were cross-referenced and the genealogical calculations were completed, the conclusion was startling. Diana Spencer had more ancient English royal blood in her veins than Prince Charles himself. The Windsors, after all, were a German dynasty with an English name. Charles traced his ancestry through Hanoverian princes and Saxe-Coburg-Gotha nobles. He had the title, the palaces, and the crown, but the deep, centuries-old roots of specifically English royal lineage ran most strongly not through him, through her. And then, in 2013, came the discovery that surprised even the researchers. A genetic ancestry company called Britain's DNA announced the results of a study into Diana's maternal line, tracing her bloodline back through her mother, through her grandmother, and further still. What they found was a woman named Eliza Kewark. Eliza had lived in Bombay, India, in the early 19th century. She had a relationship with a Scottish merchant named Theodore Forbes, who worked for the East India Company. They had a daughter together, a daughter named Catherine. Catherine was taken to England without her mother, raised as European. Her Indian origins were quietly buried, and through Catherine's descendants, generation after generation, that hidden line passed forward to a woman named Ruth, then to Frances, then to Diana. The DNA confirmed it. Eliza Kewark's bloodline, her Indian heritage, had traveled silently through Diana's maternal line and into the veins of the British royal family. A family that had spent 3 centuries marrying into the nobility of Europe had, unknowingly, carried a secret connection to India all along. And through Diana, that connection reached the throne. The researchers noted it plainly. Prince William, the future King of England, carries a small but confirmed trace of Indian DNA, passed down through his mother's hidden bloodline. Diana, Princess of Wales, died in Paris on the 31st of August, 1997. She is buried on a small island at Althorpe House, the Spencer family estate her ancestors had owned since 1508. In death, as in life, she returned to the ancient roots of her family. The world remembered her as the people's princess, the compassionate outsider who breathed humanity into a cold institution. But the truth the bloodline tells is something altogether different. The woman they called a commoner was descended from the scattered kings of England. She carried 5 lines of Stuart royal blood. She carried a hidden Indian ancestry that no one in the palace had ever announced. And through her sons, William and Harry, she quietly rewrote the genetic story of the British monarchy. History doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it moves quietly, carried in the bloodline of a young woman from an ancient family, waiting for someone to finally trace it all the way back. The secret was never truly hidden. It was always there, waiting to be found.